Welcome to the American Eagle Alliance, AEA4USA.com, where we're going to bring you This Week in American History. We here at Revolution Television and Revolution Radio want to encourage a reconnection with our proud heritage, a remembrance of America the Great. And so we're going to take a look at some of the things that happened in history during the week of April the 19th. April 19th, 1775, a big date in American history. The First Revolutionary War, AR-1, began. A British force of about 700 confronted about 75 Minutemen waiting for them on the village green in Lexington, Massachusetts. Patriot leader Captain Jonas Parker told his men, "Don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." It did. The British commander ordered the Patriots, "You damned rebels, disperse." Parker's men began to do just that when a shot rang out. It's not known who fired it. The surprised British regulars returned fire. Moments later, Lexington Green became the scene of a bloodbath as 8 Patriots were killed and 10 wounded. The despised Redcoats then marched on to Concord, but were met by hundreds of rebels. Another brief battle ensued, and the British soon decided to beat feet back to Boston, and that is when the real battle began. Americans lay in ambush and sniped away at the retreating Redcoat column all the way back to Boston. By the time they returned to their quarters, about 250 of the tyrant's men had been killed or wounded, while about 90 Patriots were lost. The enemies of America the Great have gone to great lengths to ensure that modern-day Americans do not know their proud history, but these new tyrants would be well advised to make sure that they remember this lesson. You know how history tends to repeat itself. April 19th, 1865. Funeral services were held for Abraham Lincoln in Washington, D.C. His body would later be returned to Springfield, Illinois. 1933, Franklin Roosevelt announced that the United States was going off the gold standard. 1951, having been relieved of his command, General Douglas MacArthur gave his farewell address to Congress saying, "Old soldiers never die. They just fade away." 1995, 168 people were killed when a massive bomb exploded outside the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. April 20th, 1861, Robert E. Lee resigned his command in the United States Army in preparation for moving south and serving there in the Confederate Army. 1912, Fenway Park, home of the Boston Red Sox, opened. 1940, RCA demonstrated the first U.S. electron microscope, which was capable of magnifying images 100,000 times, gave a whole new perspective on life. 1999, 2 students shot and killed 12 classmates and a teacher before committing suicide at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. April 21st, 1649. The Maryland Assembly passed the Maryland Toleration Act, guaranteeing freedom of worship for all Christians. 1789, John Adams took the oath of office, becoming the first vice president of the United States. 1832, Abraham Lincoln enlisted to serve in the Black Hawk War and was elected captain of his militia company. 1836, Texans won their independence from Mexico when forces led by Sam Houston defeated General Santa Anna's army at the Battle of San Jacinto. 1856, a train crossed the Mississippi River for the first time. It traveled on a bridge connecting Rock Island, Illinois, and Davenport, Iowa. And 100 years later, in 1956, Heartbreak Hotel hit #1 on Billboard's charts. It was Elvis Presley's first #1 recording. April 22nd. Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of the Treasury, Salmon Portland Chase, directed the United States Mint to develop a motto to be inscribed on our money, which recognized that, quote, no nation can be strong except in the strength of God, or safe except in his defense, end quote. In God we trust was the recommendation, and may have come from the fourth verse of our national anthem penned by Francis Scott Key. A lot of people don't know there's more than one verse to our national anthem. Well, in the fourth verse, you'll find these lines. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto. In God is our trust. Well, in 1864, on April the 22nd, Congress authorized the use of that phrase on United States coins. In 1955, Congress ordered that it was be placed on all United States currency, and in 1956, Congress made "In God We Trust" our official national motto. 1876, baseball's National League kicked off. Well, no, that would probably be mixing metaphors or something like that. Let's say the National League cried "batter up" for the first time as the first game in its first season began between the Boston Red Stockings and the Philadelphia Athletics. Boston won 6-5. 1889, the Oklahoma land rush began with thousands of homesteaders racing to stake claims. Boy, what a far cry from today when the federal government strives to kick farmers and ranchers off the land. 1898, the first contest of the Spanish-American War was initiated when the USS Nashville captured the Spanish ship Buena Vista off Key West, Florida. And in 1970, the first Earth Day was held. April 23rd, 1789, President-elect George Washington and his wife Martha moved into the first presidential home, the Franklin House in New York City. 1791, James Buchanan was born near Mercersburg, Pennsylvania. He would become the 15th president of the United States and the only one to be a bachelor. He's the one who immediately preceded Abraham Lincoln. 1914, Wrigley Field opened. It was originally the home of the Chicago Federals and later the Chicago Cubs. 1962, Ranger 4 was launched. It was the first U.S. spacecraft to reach the moon's surface. April 24th, 1704, the first continuously published newspaper in British North America, the Boston Newsletter, began operations. 1800, the Library of Congress was established. 1877, 12 years after the conclusion of the Civil War, President Rutherford B. Hayes withdrew federal troops from New Orleans, ending the post-war military occupation of the South. 1898, Spain declared war on the United States in what became known as the Spanish-American War. 1962, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology made the first successful coast-to-coast satellite relay of a television signal. 1980, 8 soldiers died when a helicopter and transport plane collided during the failed attempt to rescue the American hostages in Iran. April 25th, 1507, German cartographer, that's a map maker, fancy word for map maker, Martin Waldseemüller named the newly discovered landmass in the Western Hemisphere America in honor of Italian navigator Amerigo Vespucci. Aren't you glad that Waldseemüller didn't use Amerigo's last name? Somehow singing, "Oh, I'm proud to be a Vespuccian, where at least I know I'm free." That just doesn't work for me. I don't know about you. It doesn't work for me, Vespuccian. 1898, neither does my singing. This is why I don't do it more often. I apologize for that brief episode. Anyway, moving on, 1898. In response to Spain's action the day before, the United States declared war on Spain, completing the dance card for the Spanish-American War. 1945, United States and Soviet forces met at the Elbe River as World War II neared its end. 1983, the Pioneer 10 spacecraft crossed the orbit of Pluto and proceeded to be the first craft to exit our solar system. And in 1990, the Space Shuttle Discovery placed the Hubble Space Telescope in orbit. And that is this week in American history. Be proud, Americans. This is a great country. Let's keep it that way.